Hey everybody, welcome to Hope for Our Times. Hey, guess who's joining me today? You probably already figured it out because you already saw it in the thumbnail. But my good friend coming all the way from the other side of the United States of America, coming from the great state of Georgia, Ricky Scaparo is joining me from End Time Headlines. And Ricky, thank you. This is going to be an absolutely terrific program. I know it is. I love what you do. Man, I've been following your stuff for a long time, and it's always good to be able to chat with you. Thanks for joining me.
It's an honor to be here, and I love what you guys are doing as well. And it's iron sharpening iron, so it's always a great honor to be able to come on to the broadcast with you.
It is, and just so you know, everybody, I know many of you are already familiar with Ricky. If you are not, go to his website, in fact, the social media all have the same name, End Time Headlines, or endtimesheadlines.org is what I believe the website is. You can see it there in the description.
It's singular, End Time. Yeah, there's no S.
There is no S.
End Time Headlines.
After the E. End Time Headlines. So we'll get that one corrected, everybody, in the description. That's getting fixed right now. But with that, I absolutely love all the different things you bring, the insight you bring. You are not afraid of taking on the absurdity that we find that happens also in the prophecy world. We're going to get to some of those things. Ricky, I'm going to ask you about several different things you've been dealing with lately. Possibility of war. We're going to look at Russia, Ukraine. We're going to look at what's going on with Iran. Obviously, Israel. I'm going to ask you about coming civil war in America, civil war over in Europe, set up for the kingdom of Antichrist. I have so many things to ask you about, and you're such a wealth of knowledge. And I'm going to start here, and this is going to educate some people before we even go, because there's a lot of people that look at us and say, you guys are nuts, all of you rapture people, and you believe Jesus is coming again. And a lot of the pressure we have is coming from the church, the mocking and the scoffing. But let's walk through some things, and I'm going to ask you to define for us preterism and take it from there, and what it teaches, what it doesn't say, and we'll roll from there, and then start getting into things that are happening right now that really seem to refute preterism. So what is preterism?
Well, the term preterism, and I know that sounds like a strong word. It almost sounds like something we shouldn't say on YouTube because it'll get us pulled down. But it comes from the Latin, and I'm going to try to say this from my Kentucky vernacular here, preter meaning past. Thus, preterism is the view that the biblical passages concerning the end times are past tense, or they've been fulfilled. For example, according to preterism, all prophecy in the Bible is history. When we read about it, the interpretation of preterism is all scriptures regarding the book of Revelation is simply symbolic or allegorical. They're not futuristic or literal, which is insane. But they say that it's a picture of first century conflicts and not a literal description of the end times. This term preterism is directly opposed to futurism, which, you and I see these events as still future fulfillments. These things are shortly coming to pass. These things are, Paul said we see through a glass darkly. We see in part, we prophesy in part. As these things get closer, we see the more fulfillment of these things. In the camp of preterism, there's typically two camps. There's what we call full preterist and partial preterist. Now I know we'll break this down as quick as we possibly can here. Again, the preterist movement itself essentially teaches that all the end time prophecies of the New Testament were fulfilled in 70 AD when the Romans attacked Jerusalem. They came in, besieged Jerusalem, besieged the temple, took Jews captive. They teach that every event that is typically associated with the end times even Christ's second coming, the tribulation, the resurrection of the dead, and the final judgment has already taken place. And they believe that when we oppose this, they will tell us that Jesus' return to earth was they'll say that it was a spiritual return and not a physical return as we typically believe. Now, here's where the caveat to this. Preterism teaches that that the law was fulfilled in 70 AD and God's covenant with Israel was ended, and the new heavens and the new earth spoken in Revelation 21 is a description of the world under the new covenant. Again, it's shrouded in a lot of symbolism and allegorical interpretation. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Preterists will usually typically point to the passage in Jesus' Olivet Discourse, and they'll say where Jesus emphasized, he says, truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have been fulfilled. Now, we know that that is not what he meant there. What he meant was, it's one thing to have a pestilence here, an earthquake here, a tsunami here, the factions going on here and this. But when you begin to see all these things happen simultaneously and increasing, because remember, in the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew used a term called travail. Now, that's an old word, travail, and all of our women will understand this. It's a word literally meaning birth pangs. And he said these things will happen as birth pangs. Well, that means they're going to become more intense and they're going to become more rapid. And so, again, it's not just it's not just we're having an earthquake here off the coast of Russia, but how many earthquakes have we had off the coast of Russia that were over a 7.0 magnitude? This is unprecedented. And they're saying that this is only increasing when you look at these charts. And it's not just earthquakes, but it's all these other things. And then in Matthew 24, they will tell you that all this was fulfilled. Now, here's what's interesting is this is nothing new, Pastor Tom. This was going on in Paul's day. Paul warned, he warned about individuals like Hymenius and Philetus, I believe that's how you pronounce this. They taught, listen to this, that the resurrection had already taken place and it was destroying the faith of some. You can read that in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 17 through 18. Also, the Apostle Paul wrote a letter to the church of Thessalonica because a letter had been forged in Paul's name telling them that they had missed the rapture, that the Lord had come back, they'd all missed it, and then Paul had to come in and assure them, look, you've not missed the rapture. I'm going to give you these things that must take place. Let me give you one more point and we'll move on because I know we got a lot to talk about here. They will point to scriptures like, for example, in Matthew 24, where it says, I tell you in that night, there will be two men in one bed. The one will be taken and the other will be left. Two women will be grinding together. The one will be taken and the other left. Two men will be in the field. One will be taken and the other left. Now, here's the interesting part about this. Now, remember I told you guys at the beginning of this, there is what's called full preterism and partial preterism. Now, I might shock some people here, but there is some truths and credence to partial preterism, but it makes me kind of cringe to even say that. I'm going to say that there's a lot of prophecies, the prophetic words that you'll read about in Matthew 24 that has dual applications, meaning they were fulfilled in that timeline, but there will also be a future timeline. For example, when the Romans invaded Jerusalem and besieged the temple, there was men that was separated from one another. There was husbands and wives that was separated from one another. There was children that was taken captive. So thus that could potentially fulfill Matthew 24, 34 through 37, where two were in bed, one was taken, two grinding, one was taken. But we know this, Pastor Tom, this I also believe is a secondary interpretation of this is when the harpazo takes place, the catching away, the gathering together, we're going to see this be fulfilled again. Okay, so you've got, that's just one example of this. But the real problem that we run into, if we begin to hold to this preterism theology, you have to ask yourself, okay, and this is what I ask because I've had debates with these people. When did the Euphrates River dry up and allow the 200 million man army to march through the kings of the east? When did the the Son of Man appear, and the sign of the Son of Man appear in the heavens, and the earth mourned because they saw the coming of the Son of Man. When did wormwood strike the earth and kill so much of the sea life? So again, when you start breaking this down, it starts crumbling and falling apart. But this is nothing new. Solomon said that which was is that which shall be. This is the same. This doctrine has been around for thousands of years. It was during the times of the apostles, and Paul addressed it in his day, and it's resurfacing just like date setters, Pastor Tom. I was shocked when I did a research on this, went all the way back, and date setting is just as old. That stuff was around even in the times of the apostles, and it blows me away that that the body of Christ still gets suckered in and falls for this stuff even today.
Indeed, you even mentioned how you look at Paul writing to the church in Thessalonica, saying, hey, you didn't miss the rapture. So obviously it was even taught way back then in the first century, shortly after the church even began. I mean, it's just kind of wild to see some of these things. I also think Daniel, for example, chapter 9 is written off by the preterists as being a book you can't pay any attention to. But there in Daniel, Gabriel tells Daniel, hey, here's 6 reasons why the 70th week must be fulfilled, to bring an end to transgression, an end to sin, bring in all righteousness, seal up vision and prophecy, anoint the most holy. You have these reasons. Well, when did that ever take place? Has there been an end of sin in Jerusalem in 70 AD, which is often taught, as you mentioned, when Rome came in? Well, the Jews didn't stop sinning. The Gentiles sure didn't stop sinning. Plus, all these things are global. All right, so that kind of gives people a background of that thought. By the way, I have a different interpretation of the 200 million man army coming across.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah. We can get into it later if we want to.
Yeah.
But that has no bearing on what we believe about the second coming of Christ, the rapture, our salvation, or any of those things. It's a fun topic to talk about, though.
It is.
All right. So let's get into this. All right. So we look at preterism. They're saying things have been fulfilled. However, if a person, Ricky, takes the book of Revelation and realizes, wait a minute, we can see this literally coming about. There are some things in the book of Revelation where we know it is allegorical, because John will say,
sure, I
saw this, it looked like, or something like that. The rest of it, there is actually 144,000 Jews. John doesn't say they appeared like it. They were wearing kippahs or something. It's not that. No, these were. Yeah, go ahead.
Interesting tidbit here. A lot of pastors discourage from reading the book of Revelation, and one of the arguments they propose is it's too shrouded in symbolism and it's too confusing. And they say, and their argument is, why didn't John if this was quote unquote literal, then why didn't he speak plainly? Well, if you do some research on this, it's abundantly obvious why John could not write down literal destruction of certain things like Rome and the dragon and the Jewish people. The reason why he uses symbolism, Pastor Tom, is because we have to remember in 95 AD, John, the Revelator, was exiled to the Isle of Patmos in Rome. Rome was the leading superpower of the world. And if John would have written anything of a negative connotation towards Rome, they would have never allowed this guy to come off the island. I mean, they tried to kill this guy, boiled him in oil, but God preserved him supernaturally so he could write the book of Revelation. So you have to realize that the reason why John used symbolism is for those who have ears to hear, come on somebody, can hear, and those who has eyes to see can see. We're talking about spiritually minded. And all symbolism in the Bible is not going to contradict one another. When we talk about a lamb, who do we think of? Christ. We talk about a dragon. What do you think of? You think of Satan. Why? Because there's what's called in theology the law of first mention. So the reason why John had to shroud this in so much symbolism is simply because that was wisdom from God, and the man would have never, the book of Revelation would have never went into circulation because the Roman Empire would have they would have destroyed it. They would have called and they would have called it propaganda. But when he's drawing a big red dragon attacking a woman that's pregnant in the heavens, and he's using all his symbolism, they probably thought this guy had lost his mind. They're like, just leave this guy alone. We've already tried to boil him in oil, didn't kill him. Now he's just lost his mind. Whatever, he's over here writing something or whatever. I mean, does that make sense? I think it makes sense.
It totally does. Plus, a couple of other things. When John is writing about the 7 churches in the book of Revelation, each of them is dealing with the Roman Empire in their own way. And 5 of them were basically going along with whatever Caesar wanted. They were, as far as their faith went, they were compromisers, they were dead, and they really were, as a whole, putting Caesar above Jesus. They go, well, we worship Jesus, however, but it was the 2 churches that pushed back against Rome that got in trouble with Rome. It was Smyrna and Philadelphia. And they were small in number. They were pushing back. They refused to give Caesar what Caesar wanted. They were the ones that were persecuted. And John, obviously, they tried to kill him, as you said, put into this boiling oil. Something else that I find fascinating, I was asked this question recently, Ricky, about why, when it comes to Bible prophecy, just like you said, why didn't God make it more clear than it is? And I said, well, if you think of it like this, because when you and I read it, it's like you can't not see it, right? But when Jesus was talking to the disciples, and the disciples said, why do you speak to them in parables? Well, they're not going to be able to hear it. And then, it goes into the whole description there of why, but it has been given to the people of God to be able to understand these things. Hence, you have in Daniel chapter 12, the wicked will continue to do their wickedness, and they will see it, but they will not understand. The wise will see it, but they will understand. So it's that same principle. It's like, I mean, for us, it's like you look at Bible prophecy, you go, how can you not see it? And hence, this is how God speaks to those who are his.
That's right.
And also, just like it was with the parables, the people who are really of God will dig deeper and say, well, let me try and figure this out. And God leads us along. I mean, it is hard, Ricky. We're going to go here to look at things in the book of Revelation now and not see them as literal. It is really tough. And I don't know if you want to comment on any of this, but I'm going to throw this out to you first. Then you can bring in anything you want. But you look at Vietnam, deleted or shut down or put on hold, whatever it was, millions of bank accounts. I think it was 86 million or something like that.
Yeah, you're right.
Lacking biometric verification. So we look at this and we start looking at, we know that we are being pushed into this digital format. We can talk about UK, we can talk about Europe as a whole. We can see this in Vietnam. What do we see about this? They did this, the mark of the beast, and then we look at something like preterism as we open up, saying you can't really believe these things, but we look at the book of Revelation and go, wait a minute. Plus what's coming regarding the Great Tribulation, it's the whole earth. Israel becomes the epicenter, but it really is upon the whole earth. That's never happened before either, but can you take it from here?
Well, what you just said right there, if people were paying attention, destroys the entire theology of preterism. Because if the quote-unquote mark of the beast was the time of Nero and the Roman Empire, that was limited to one location in Jerusalem where they were issuing the mark. Think about it. But when you read Revelation 13, it says the whole world complies to it. The whole world will be forced to buy, sell, and trade, lest without the mark of the beast, they will not be able to do this. So see the difference here, geographically speaking. For another example, they thought it was crazy at one time when John wrote that when the two witnesses would be slain in the streets of Jerusalem, that the whole world will witness this, they'll celebrate this, and they'll pass gifts one to another, and they'll be celebrating the death of two righteous prophets of God. And they look at that and they laugh at John and said, "Doesn't this guy realize how's the whole world going to be able to witness this and see this?" Well, when he wrote that 95 AD, the technology did not exist that we have today, which is streaming satellite, which is smartphones, which is social media platforms, all these tools that are in place. So literally when that event takes place in Jerusalem, the whole world will be able to stream it live and we'll watch it. And Pastor Tom, I'm gonna throw this in there and then I'll go back to the digital identification system. We did a whole podcast on this, the Charlie Kirk incident, how people responded to that by celebrating the death of a righteous man who stood for the gospel of Jesus Christ. It sent a chill down my spine because I saw that as a prophetic preview to what's going to take place when those two men of God show up in Jerusalem and they're proclaiming God's truth and they're declaring the word of the Lord. And the Bible says that they have the power to do supernatural things, and they are a hindrance to the Antichrist and his system because they're exposing it. And if you read the conditions of Jerusalem in that day, John describes it as spiritual Sodom and Egypt. Think about that, church. So that's the conditions that is going to be of Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, or not the capital of Israel, but the location of Israel, the holy place of Israel. John says it's going to be spiritual Sodom and Egypt in the last days when these two witnesses emerge. So there'll be such gross darkness and iniquity in the city of Jerusalem. By the way, Tel Aviv is one of the leading homosexual capitals of the world, in case y'all didn't know that. That's where they come and they do all this stuff. So it's not far-fetched to be able to see how this is coming to pass. But when these two men, think about this, Pastor Tom, these two men are exposing the beast, exposing the fall. They're exposing the beast system, okay, because it don't get put into place till Revelation 13. But I believe it's already, at this point, things are moving along and darkness is beginning to prevail. And these two witnesses are exposing all this. And when they're slain by the beast, it says the whole world will rejoice and celebrate. Think about that. That is insane. And when that happened with Charlie Kirk, I knew, there's a prophetic preview of how that's going to happen. Now, speaking of prophetic previews, I believe this whole thing, the digital identification system, just like Steimer came out and said, and he said, let me make this clear. You will not work unless you comply to a system of identification that marks you, that you're identified as complying to our system. Now, it's not just the United Kingdom, but now Switzerland's on board with this, and this will continue to spread. We know this is going to happen, and they're going to integrate everything into this: the medical passports, vaccination passport. Everything's going to be integrated in this. You're buying, selling, you're purchasing, your medical history. I mean, all of that's going to be integrated into this. We all see this coming. Again, so when you read Revelation 13, and again, going back to the preterist view, well, that was issued by Nero and they were marking them. Well, yeah, they were putting things on their hands and their bodies, but when you go to the 1611 King James, have you ever seen this, Pastor Tom, the discrepancy in this? You go to 1611 King James, it says there'll be a mark put in the right hand, in the forehead. But if you go to the New King James, it uses the word on. And I always thought that was interesting. They use on or in. I always like to go back to the original closest interpretation or translation to, its original language. So I always say in. I'm going to go with in. And we see this, you and I talked about this on our last program that you and I did, and I had you on my program. We talked about how society is being conditioned. Once we get a society conditioned to accept something, then we move it to the next level. Think about this, Pastor Tom. I know you and I are close to the same age, but maybe not.
I think I'm
maybe
old
not
enough
that close.
I think I'm old enough to be your dad, maybe almost your grandpa.
Yeah, I would say maybe not that close.
I was born in 1959.
Hey, I was trying to compliment you on my side here, okay?
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, well, now you don't make me. Oh, yeah. When you remember when credit cards came out, and we had a whole generation, it was like, oh my gosh, this is the mark of the beast. And then the barcodes came out. Oh my gosh, this is the mark of the beast. But watch this. Everybody we got used to that. Oh, okay, that's nothing. And then we got these smartphones, and then they introduced the fingerprint. Remember that? You pick up your phone, at least on the iPhones. I think they went to Android too, and you put your thumb on there. And I remember thinking, even then, was like, okay, this is not cool, But then what happens? You get used to that. It becomes normal. Then they moved to biometrics, which was the retinal, the eye scanner, the facial recognition. Now, what's the next step? What's the next step after this? The next step after this is the envision of your folks like Bill Gates, Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, Larry Ellison, Elon Musk. All of these guys have an envision of a future that eliminates these pesky smartphones, because who wants to have something in your hand and have to carry it in your pocket? So instead, we're going to replace that with, according to Bill Gates, a digital tattoo. They'll have all this information. If you talk to Elon Musk, he'll say, no, well, let's not do that. Let's do a brain chip interface system like Neuralink, which is a chip that goes in your head. Then you got Peter Thiel that wants to merge flesh with metal and make us transhumanism. So these crazy whack jobs they're in court. They're embedded in the White House, Pastor Tom. And you know this. Our current president, we love a lot of the things he's done, but this is the one thing, like I said before, this is the thing that bothers me, because President Trump got up and said, we're going to lead artificial intelligence in America, whatever it takes, we're going to do that. And I'm like, wow. And Stargate, you guys do the research, look up Stargate and their envision of what they're going to do, these database systems, what they're going to do in the medical field, and a tailor-fit jab that will be tailor-fit, all with the help of artificial intelligence and super artificial intelligence. So where is that all leading us to, Pastor Tom? The beast system, not just the mark of the beast, but I believe these, and I've said this before, Revelation 13, the false prophet, read it, it says that he will choose people in the earth that will create this image of the beast. And I believe we have the perfect candidates already in place that has the know-how, the innovation, the money, the creativity, and all that to create what we read about is the image of the beast, and I believe it'll be AI.
Yeah, I look at it and think, if you go back, I mean, I can go back 20 years, think about some of the prophecy messages I did back then. I remember a specific Bible prophecy I did, update I did many years ago, and I was talking about RFID chips and what they were already capable of 20 years ago. You fast forward to where we are now, and people are just starting to hear about not necessarily the RFID chip, but still the same dynamic within your phone, or what they're saying, what you're just talking about, what Elon Musk wants to do, Peter Thiel, all of them. Well, the technology has actually been here for a long time, so it makes you wonder.
It is.
What's really been going on for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years is the conditioning of the masses. I mean, we could actually go back much further than that. The Club of Rome developed their kingdom of 10 kings on their global map decades ago. So, but it's been, Ricky, I look at it as the people have to be conditioned to receive what's coming, and they are.
Yes.
People are being moved right along to say, hey, sign me up. And okay, and you mentioned Neuralink or whatever the thing is that Elon Musk talks about, and this particular jab being being customized for your DNA. You can go in, the way I understand it, Ricky, you'll be able to go into a medical facility. You might have cancer. you get treated with this that is specific to your DNA for that cancer.
That's it.
It'll be the perfect match because of AI technology. It'll be the perfect match. You'll be healed and walk out. And Elon Musk has already said the lame will walk, the deaf will hear, the blind will see.
It.
Well, that's what Jesus did. And so they'll be able to say, no, we've got it all figured out. Jesus just knew the black magic stuff, so he figured it out 2,000 years ago. But with science, we got this globally now. So the enticement for the mark of the beast, I'm thinking over the next few years, is going to grow significantly with the carrot. People wanting to say, sign me up.
Yes,
and
sir.
if you sign up, guess what? Who knows? It might be part of this lie, Ricky, where the serpent, the dragon, as you mentioned earlier, says to Eve in the garden, Eve, did God really say that? He knows that when you eat of the fruit of that tree in the midst of the garden, you'll be like God. And you'll live forever. You won't surely die. So when you look at this, you'll have knowledge like God, and you won't surely, he knows you won't surely die. So when you look at it, you start to go, this is what these are promising. But man, who is not, if you're paralyzed, Ricky, wouldn't you say, well, of course I want to walk. But you have to worship the beast and receive his mark if you want to be able to walk again if you're paralyzed. So the enticement's going to be off the charts.
And how many of those 90s end time apocalyptic movies were based on that premise? I remember some of these. I remember when I first got saved and gave my heart to the Lord in 2000. Of course, Left Behind just came on the scene. That was a big one. Then there was the other ones. I can't remember what it was. I think it was called The Apocalypse and Tribulation Code, and there was all these other ones. One of them actually had a VR set. I don't know if you've ever seen that. They put this VR set in. It was the mark of the beast. You put this on. When they put this thing on, the Antichrist would appear to them and would entice them with the carrot. Just like you said, they were sick. He would offer them healing from their disabilities. Everything was there if they take that mark. And once they took that mark, they would die. In the movie, they would die, and they took off the headset and they were branded with this mark. And you think about that, that's what's in the book of Revelation. The word of the Lord tells us that if you take that mark, you're done. You're, as the younger my kids say, you're cooked. There's no hope for you. And there's two things that are, in my opinion, they're one and the same, but Jesus said all sins will be forgiven, even those who speak against the Son of Man. But if any man blasphemes the Holy Ghost, it's the unforgivable sin. But then you read over here, and I want to say it's in Revelation 17, 14, somewhere around there, where it talks about those who take the mark will be damned for eternity. So that's an unforgivable sin. But I believe, Pastor Tom, that is because it's a form of blasphemy. You're blaspheming the Holy Spirit because you're literally taking a pledge. You're pledging your allegiance to the Antichrist. Because remember, it's not the Antichrist who issues the image of the beast. It's the false prophet. And the false prophet, now I don't know what your take is on this or your perspective on this, but I've studied this. And it's the Antichrist appears to be like a political leader who can make war with the beast. He pulls in, he starts out with a small army, he becomes great, he rises among the 10, he emerges as a political leader, and he has an army that he creates. But then you read, when you study the false prophet, it's a man, he's a lamb, so he presents himself as a false Christ or a Messiah, but he has two horns. And some speculate in theological circles that he'll merge two major religions together, and he'll create a false religion that, according to John, 1 John, 2 John, they will deny that Yeshua is the Messiah. They'll deny that he's the Son of God. And because remember, there's all these blasphemies written on the Antichrist. So whatever the religion is of the Antichrist and the false prophet, it will deny, of course it's going to deny Jesus was the Son of God, because this is how the Antichrist is going to set in the temple. By the way, Revelation 11, that there will be a third temple constructed. He will set in that temple in 2 Thessalonians. And what does it say? He declares himself as God. So that, in my opinion, I believe the mark of the beast is going to have a religious affiliation to whatever the religion is of the Antichrist, the false prophet, and that beast system.
I would agree. And when I take that with Daniel chapter 11, for example, and Revelation chapter 17, where you have this harlot system that I believe has been
Yes.
around since the beginning, and it spilled the blood of the saints. I believe since the beginning, it's been always after the people of God. It's all in all of the different pagan cultures. But the harlot system will be used by the 10 kings, just like a harlot. It's a fake. It's just like it's just as if a man goes and sees a prostitute, and then he does away with her. I got what I wanted. Does away with her. That's what Revelation 17 describes as using the harlot system. But the false prophet is going to be the one that I believe is at the top of this final system. They've used it. They've gotten the power that they need from using that system. The woman rides the beast, but then the woman is killed. So you see it, you go, the woman thinks she's in charge, she is not. So the whole thing flips. The 10 kings take the power, they give it to the beast, but the false prophet is the one that comes along and says, hey, this is your God. He is your God. He's your Savior.
Yeah.
2 Thessalonians 2, the passage you quoted, though, that God says, I will send strong delusion among the people, and they will believe the lie because they would not receive the love of the truth. Ricky, I see all this and think it's both working together. It's this antichrist, a false prophet. It's this political, military. Plus, I mean, any leader has realized you have to get control of the religion. Islam would be the perfect example. You can control the masses with this religious veneer, although I believe Islam is really a political thing, but that's another story. But you give it a religious veneer, then you can control the masses. So I believe this is what the false prophet's going to be sitting at the top of, appearing to be like a Christian leader, the Christian leader, the two horns like a lamb, but speaks like the dragon, as you said. So it's false, absolutely false. All right, I probably talked enough. Let's go to the next thing, because you're my guest. All right. Ricky, we see threats of wars, Russia, Ukraine, Iran, all these different dynamics. Things are escalating. EU is even talking about building up more military to deal with the situation in Ukraine. Trump is saying, hey, we're going to be supporting Ukraine. Where do you see that going? And then I'm going to ask you after that about civil war, because we see in America, tensions are increasing. In Europe, they're off the charts. So let's start with the greater war first.
Well, I mean, I always take, I try to tell people to go back to the Word of God. And when they asked him, what will be the signs of your coming in the end of the age? In Matthew 24, verse 6, he says, and you will hear of wars, plural tense, and rumors, plural tense, of wars. All this is in plural tense. But the thing that really sticks out to me, Pastor Tom, says, see that you're not troubled. For all of these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. But then he transitions to nation against nation, and that's in Greek, that's ethnos against ethnos. And that'll probably get us into, that's going to get us into the Civil War thing that you're wanting to talk about. But let's talk about the wars and factions and stuff that in Matthew 24. I believe based on what Christ told us, if these things happen as birth pangs, and we truly are that generation that will not pass until all these things, come to pass. Now, I know we have generations that went before us, our parents, our grandparents, and they truly thought they were the last generation. So we could be wrong, but it's hard to fathom 20 years, 30 years at the rate we're in. I mean, even Jesus said himself about the tribulation, unless those days be shortened, no flesh would survive. I mean, everybody can feel this, not just prophetic, us in the prophetic circles, but when I go outside of this, Pastor Tom, and like it's October, so next month will be Thanksgiving. I'll go down to Virginia, and we go every year, and we spend time with our family, and we'll all sit around for Thanksgiving. And inevitably, it always we get in these conversations, and even a lot of them individuals who they don't go to church, they don't have a personal relationship with Christ, but they can all feel that we're sitting on a powder keg. We've come to a climax. We're reaching that threshold. It's like everybody knows and they can feel this something. It's going to take one trigger event. NATO shoots down a Russian aircraft. Russia, crosses over, crosses the line. A nuke is dropped in Ukraine or dropped in Russia. I just saw an article that Trump is now supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Now, what does that mean? To most people, they're not even, well, what does that mean? We're talking about they're going to be able to reach so very far into Russia. They've already struck oil facilities there. And by the way, Russia, I saw where Putin today was condescending Trump, blasting America, and literally saying that America is on the precipice of a civil war. So that tells me, Pastor Tom, our enemies are looking and they're conspiring and they see this. And I would go a step further and say that they're propagating this. They want this to happen. I mean, think about it. They would benefit from this. Russia would benefit from it. China would benefit from it. Iran would benefit from this. So our enemies are laughing at us. And we're giving him, it's almost like a comedy show sometimes because we're providing the material. I mean, we got politicians arguing over the goofiest stuff. And, when it blows my mind that we have seated politicians that are fighting an administration that is that's wanting to clean up the nonsense in the streets and protect civilians. And the only reason if this was a Democrat in office, I hate getting political. I do, honestly, but I'm going to have to go here with this. But let's just be honest here. Let's be real. If it was any other president, if this was a Biden administration or the Obama administration or whoever, a Democratic administration, and they proposed the same thing, these people would have no problem with it. But the hatred to Donald Trump is insane. And this is the only reason that they're opposing this stuff, because who in their right mind would not want to live in a city and a neighborhood where you can sleep at night and feel comfortable and be at peace and your children are not threatened and the schools are not threatened? I don't understand this. And if you are a citizen of the United States and you hate our nation, you hate our country, and you burn the flag, please leave, get out. I know I'm getting a little stirred up here, but look, I love God, but I love our country too, and I think that you agree with me with this. And just like this Bad Bunny character that's going to do the Super Bowl, if he is going to do the Super Bowl halftime, this guy's already. I mean, this is a political ploy. He's a leftist tool that's being used. He's already said he's going to do the whole Super Bowl in Spanish. He's gonna sing the whole Spanish, and he told us, go ahead and study now and learn the language because you're gonna have to deal with it. It's unbelievable. It's just a slap in the face. Not to mention what he represents, and all. Anyway, I don't want to get all sidetracked on that, but on a rabbit trail. But these conflicts, these wars, again, they're only going to escalate, Pastor. We know that. If we're truly in the last days. Remember, I always tell people, if you go to 2 Thessalonians, Paul said there was a mystery of iniquity or lawlessness that it was present in his day, but it will intensify as we get to the fulfillment before the arrival of the Antichrist, because that is going to pave the way for the arrival of the lawless one. So I think that's where we're at. Now, I'm going to kick it back off to you because I know you wanted to talk about the Civil War aspect of this. So I'm going to kick it back off to you and see where you want to go with that.
Well, I think everything you just said could lead us into a civil war. I mean, I'm looking at this NFL halftime show. You've got to be kidding me. And I don't think we're risking speaking Spanish here in America. I think we're risking speaking something like Farsi or Arabic or something like that. We are on the verge. We look at cities that have been colonized. Minneapolis, Dearborn, New York is about ready to be colonized. You look at who the real colonizers are. Nevertheless, Ricky, you also mentioned this, which is like so bizarre. Why would you not want your city to be protected? And yet, I think it's the mayor of Chicago that came out and said, we're filing a lawsuit. You can't come in here. Newsom in California said, we're filing a lawsuit. the ICE can't come in here. I mean, how ridiculous. So you want people to be raped and murdered and slaughtered on your streets, and you think that's a good idea? They, as you said, they hate Trump so much, they're willing to harm themselves. But Ricky, that speaks to a reprobate mind, Romans chapter 1, where not only will people be completely immoral, but also they will do things in their own mind, professing to be wise, they became fools, but they will do things that will literally harm themselves, but they're okay with it because they hate whatever it is that they're opposing. So they'll harm themselves. So we see us already in that place. Okay, we only have a few minutes left. Okay, Ricky, do you see a civil war here in America? And again, we don't know the timing of the rapture. Both you and I totally agree on that. We do not know the timing of it, but we look at things escalating. I'll throw out two things, a civil war, and what, as we look at things now, we've kicked the can further down the road. America, I do not believe, is in Bible prophecy in the tribulation period as a superpower. Doesn't mean Americans don't exist, but being a superpower, I do not believe they are a superpower in the last days. So these two things combined, civil war, American superpower, what do you think could be the end of America as we know it?
I will do this as quick as possible. I believe America is a picture of the Roman Empire. There's like 16 parallels of Rome and America, and we could go through all that, but we don't have time to do that. And I believe America is going in the same direction and the same pattern as the Roman Empire. They collapse from within. And here's the thing. We know we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but we're talking about principalities and powers. The enemy is orchestrating this. I always say this: the enemy plans it, men perform it, but God allows it. Okay? So when people say, is this God, is this Satan, is this the devil, is this men? Again, Satan is orchestrating it. Men are performing it, but God is permitting it and allowing it. Now you say, well, why would God allow this? Because we got to remember, guys, again, it's chaos. It's chaos that produces the Antichrist. We have to get to a place. We have to get from point A to point B. And Pastor Tom, in Luke 21, if you read Luke 21, when you get down to the bottom of the passage, it says, and on earth there will be distress of nations with perplexity. And when you read that, it's basically saying this is not just an American thing, but this is Pastor Tom talked about. Look what's happening in the United Kingdom. This is happening in the United Kingdom. It's happening across Europe. It's happening even outside of when you read these stories outside of America and even outside of Europe, you're seeing countries that are they're overthrowing their government. Even in Syria, their government was on threat. So this is the distress of nations. That word perplexity means chaos, confusion, bewilderment. We're going to get to a place where it's the picture's like a chicken with a rooster with its head cut off, and you let it go, and it's just going all over the place. It doesn't know to go left or right and like people are scrambling to try to find answers. So this is all. It's orchestrated chaos is what I call it, because again, I believe it's going to be, this is the atmosphere that is going to manifest the Antichrist. And I base that on all kinds of scriptures. Jesus said that in Isaiah, it talks about gross darkness will cover the earth. Jesus said the love of many will wax cold. He talks about that even, we can go real deep with this, and he says, I think not that the Son of Man came to bring peace and unity, but to bring a sword. Every man's hand. He talks about a husband will be against the wife, and the wife. And it's not that Jesus is out to destroy and divide homes. But we'll get to a point, guys, where the gospel is going to divide and separate. And I believe we're there, Pastor Tom. The sheep from the goats and the wheats from the tares. Remember, Jesus said he's going to allow them to grow together until the end of the age. But we who have discernment and we are born again and have the Spirit of God in us, we can discern the wheats and the tares and the sheep and the goat. Anybody, I don't care what political side of the spectrum they're on, anybody that celebrates the assassination and the death of a human being, a father of two, and leaving a widow, anybody that celebrates that my friend, you're not on the side of the kingdom of God. That is, you're siding with the kingdom of darkness, who's out to kill, steal, and destroy. So again, it's not very difficult, guys, to begin to distinguish that and see the separation of this wheat and tare and sheep and goat. But I believe it is going to get, and I know this is, it's going to get bad, it's going to get worse, but we have a hope. We have a hope. We're a kingdom within a kingdom. And I'm going to say this real quick. I'm going to kick it back off to you. Remember, guys, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were in captivity in Babylon. Imagine this. They're in captivity to Babylon, but God blessed them. He promoted them. His hand was upon them. He raised them up and used them in the midst of Babylon. So don't put your trust and your hope, come on, in a kingdom that can fall and collapse like America. Okay, put your trust in your hope in a kingdom whose maker and builder was not made with hands, but we're talking about the kingdom of heaven. That's where we can't go wrong if we put our faith and our trust not in our government, not in a political figure, not in a president, but in Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen. Ricky, could not be said better. That's a perfect place to wrap up our time together. So spot on. Fantastic having you on today. Thank you, my brother, for joining me. And I can't wait. I want to bring you back. I want to talk about the 10 Kings. I want to talk about some more things that you were talking about. We could go on for hours, but that was such a great time, a great place to just conclude our time together. Again, everybody, you can follow Ricky. Please do, if you don't already, endtimeheadlines.org. You can also follow him on the social media platforms. On Facebook, Instagram, wherever Ricky is, wherever you'll find him. Just go look for him. And also, I want to encourage you, like, subscribe, and share this with your friends. It's really the only way that we can continue to move forward and be able to reach new people with the hope of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Ricky, great having you here today. Can't wait till next time. And we'll be talking to you later, everybody. God bless you. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Pastor. God bless you guys.